You glance at the calendar and feel a subtle sense of panic. It's not the panic of someone running out of time, but the unease of someone who senses they are living in the wrong era. If you identify as an INEJ or INFJ, the rare architects and advocates of the human psyche, your 20s probably felt less like a period of freedom and discovery and more like a prolonged, stifling confinement in unfamiliar territory. You observed the censors, executives, and charismatics taking command of the early adulthood playground. They knew the rules of the game. They excelled at small talk, networking, and climbing ladders that, to you, seemed obviously set against burning structures. And you? You remained on the sidelines, not from a lack of ability, but because the weight of potential consequences felt too great. Carl Jung, the very mind that gave us the language to describe your cognitive framework, understood this journey all too well. He recognized that for those with dominant intuition, the first half of life often involves repeated, challenging clashes with reality. You are built for the long game, yet you are forced to navigate a world that prioritizes immediate results. The reason you haven't yet reached the level of greatness you quietly know is possible isn't due to any flaw in you. It's because your biological and psychological design is intended for the later stages of the journey. You are not a sprinter. You are a glaciologist. You move deliberately, deeply, and with the immense weight of inevitable truths. To understand why your moment hasn't arrived yet, we need to examine the workings of your mind, especially the function that governs you, introverted intuition for both INFJs and INEJs. And make no mistake, intuition isn't simply a mystical gut feeling. It operates as a high-speed synthesis of unconscious information. In your 20s, this function is insatiable. It seeks patterns. It seeks understanding. But here lies the challenge. You cannot synthesize information you haven't yet acquired. The first 3 decades of life are essentially a period of data collection. You are like an artificial intelligence still in training. Every heartbreak, every rejected job application, every moment of solitude, and every awkward social encounter was not wasted. These were the raw materials, the code of human nature being uploaded into your mental database. Later, when you communicate, you don't just speak from opinion. You speak from precise, almost unerringly accurate internal simulation of reality. During this phase, the world tends to favor the extroverted sensor. It rewards those who act instinctively, who leap first and construct a parachute on the way down. But you need to understand the aerodynamics of the parachute, the wind speed, and the landscape of the landing zone before you even step off the edge. In a fast-paced culture, this careful approach can appear as hesitation. It can make you seem like a procrastinator. You've probably been labeled too serious, too intense, or lost in thought. You watch your peers reach visible milestones, buying homes, getting married, earning promotions, while you felt as if you were dissolving. This process of dissolution is what alchemists referred to as the solutio, the dissolving of the ego. Jung suggested that the first half of life is largely guided by the ego's need to form a persona, a social mask to wear in the world. For most people, this is straightforward. They select a mask, wear it, and eventually become it. But for you, the mask never fits. It always feels uncomfortable. It always feels inauthentic. You try to be the ideal employee, the social butterfly, the model student, but your soul resisted the superficiality of it all. This resistance often appeared as depression or existential anxiety. You may have asked yourself, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just find contentment in ordinary things? The answer is straightforward. You aren't made for the ordinary. You are built for the archetypal. You are searching for meaning in a world that primarily offers commodities. The struggles you experienced in your 20s were the friction of your expansive inner world colliding with the limits of the external world. Your vision is boundless, yet your body and finances are finite. This discrepancy generates tension, one capable of tearing a person apart. But pay attention, this tension is also the fuel. Jung described this as anti-adroia, the natural tendency for things to transform into their opposites. The deep oppression and frustration of your early years are storing a kinetic energy that will eventually release with remarkable force in later life. The silence you have maintained is not empty. It is compressed, charged. Consider the bamboo tree. For the first 5 years, you water it and nothing emerges. No shoots break the surface. To an observer, it seems like a failed effort. Yet underground, an intricate root system is expanding, anchoring itself firmly into the bedrock. Then, in the 5th year, the bamboo can grow 80 feet in just 6 weeks. Your 20s were the root-building phase. You were growing downward, preparing to rise higher than anyone else. A skyscraper cannot stand on a foundation meant for a tent. For INFJs and INTJs, the specific challenge lies in the paradox of maturity. As children, you were likely called old souls. You grasped adult ideas, emotional subtleties, and abstract concepts long before mastering basic skills. You often played the role of therapist to your parents or mediator among peers on the playground. You felt unusually mature at 10. Yet a curious inversion occurs in your 20s, the age when society expects you to be an adult, and suddenly you feel childlike. Why? Because the skills demanded in early adulthood are often administrative and sensory. Paying bills, navigating office politics, remembering dates, making small talk. These are precisely the areas where your cognitive strengths are weakest. You struggle with practical tasks while your mind is occupied with the deeper riddles of existence. This creates a crisis of confidence. You start questioning your own intelligence. If you are so capable, why is attending a cocktail party so difficult? Why does making a simple decision feel paralyzing? For INEJs, this manifests as the NI-Phi loop. For INFJs, the NI-T loop, a spiral of introverted overanalysis that disconnects you from the external world. You withdraw. You close the doors. You create a fortress of solitude because the world feels too loud, too bright, too chaotic. Yet this retreat is essential. Jung spent years in isolation, building his stone tower at Bollingen and descending into his own red book explorations to uncover insight. You have been on a similar path. You haven't been hiding. You've been incubating. Society may tell you that you're falling behind, but it measures progress with a linear clock. You operate on cyclical time. The intuitive mind doesn't age linearly. It matures and ripens. Consider the depth of what you are developing. INEJs are master strategists, perceiving the systems beneath reality. INFJs are master empaths, perceiving the souls behind the masks. These are not skills acquired in a single decade. They require a lifetime of observation. The great intuitives in history, Plato, Dante, Jung himself, produced their most profound work not in the flush of youth, but in the measured depth of middle and later years. The first half of life is meant to break their hearts, so that the second half can gather the fragments to construct a cathedral. Yet there is a danger, a trap that ensnares many of the most brilliant minds before they ever fully flourish. It is the trap of the poor eternus, the eternal child who falls in love with the potential of the future, but avoids engaging with the messy reality of the present. You perceive the ideal version of everything. Reality, by comparison, always disappoints. You envision the perfect novel in your mind, so the flawed version never reaches the page. You see the perfect relationship, so you reject the imperfect human standing before you. You dwell in the realm of the gods, and return to earth feels like a degradation. This becomes provisional life. You tell yourself you are merely waiting for the right moment, the right partner, the right opportunity. You tell yourself that you are preserving your potential for something worthy, but deep down, a disturbing thought begins to take root in your unconscious. Perhaps you aren't waiting for life to begin, but life is actually passing by while you analyze it. This is the crisis point. It is the moment where the psychologically gifted often break. The weight of unrealized potential becomes a physical burden on the chest. You observe the ordinary people you once envied for their simplicity, the ones who chose a career, a partner, and moved forward, and a sense of envy creeps in. At least they are living. At least they are in the arena, while you remain in the stands, quietly critiquing the techniques of the gladiators. But there's a solution, and it isn't about lowering your standards or becoming normal. Jung found that the remedy for the poor eternus, the eternal child trapped in perfection of thought, is not to grow up according to society's rules by becoming dull and compliant. The solution is work, but not just any work. It is work that demands effort, that requires you to get your hands dirty. It is the work of taking your intuition from the heavens and shaping it into physical reality. This explains why, as you approach your 30s or 40s, you may feel a sudden, urgent drive to build, to write, to create, or even to push your body to its limits. Your soul is craving friction. It has grown weary of the air. It longs for the earth. This leads us to an important insight about your isolation. For years, you have walked this path alone, believing that your complexity made connection impossible. Yet the same isolation that once protected you in youth can become a prison in adulthood. You need to find others, not to follow a herd, for that is not your way, but to find a pack. Jung often described an aristocracy of the spirit, a quiet network of individuals attuned to deeper realities. If you've been nodding along to this analysis, feeling truly seen for the first time in years, you are likely part of this dispersed tribe. We are gathering these scattered minds right here. If you want to prevent yourself from slipping back into the unconscious routines of daily life, and if you want this channel to remain a lighthouse in your feed, make the commitment to subscribe now. It may seem like a small gesture, but it signals to your own psyche that you are choosing truth over noise. We are constructing the map you've been seeking. Once you commit to descending and landing your plane on the rough terrain of reality, you access the most powerful tool in the late bloomer's arsenal, the shadow. In the first half of your life, you were likely good. As an INFJ, you were empathetic, sensitive, and a peacemaker. As an INEJ, you were quiet and observant, often holding back your sharpest critiques to avoid conflict. You suppress your aggression, ambition, and desire for power because you were taught these traits were undesirable. You linked power with the corrupt authority figures around you, the loud, the shallow, the bullies. In your attempt to be harmless, you suppress your own drive. But Jung reminds us, enlightenment does not come from imagining figures of light. It comes from bringing the darkness into consciousness. To succeed later in life, you must integrate your shadow. You must reclaim the parts of yourself you discarded. The ambition you labeled as greed is actually a fuel to build your empire. The anger you feared was destructive is the energy that sets boundaries and prevents exploitation. The late bloomer succeeds because they stop apologizing for their power. Consider this. When a 20-year-old wields power, they can be dangerous. They have energy without wisdom. But you have spent decades mastering empathy. You have spent years observing suffering, studying human frailty, and analyzing the outcomes of poor decisions. Because of this, you can be trusted with power. When you finally access that deep well of ambition and drive, you will not become a tyrant. You will become a force of nature. You will act with precision and authority that early achievers cannot match, because their power stems from ego, while yours arises from a full integration of your being. This mastery of the shadow gives the late success of the intuitive its unique quality. It is not frantic. It is not desperate. It is formidable. Have you ever noticed how certain older actors, writers, or leaders carry a presence that feels dense, almost gravitational? That is the weight of an integrated shadow. They are not trying to impress anyone. They simply occupy their own space fully. They no longer seek the world's permission to exist. This is the path you are moving toward. The hesitation you felt in your youth was your intuition signaling that you weren't ready to handle this level of energy. Had you achieved success at 20, your ego might have inflated uncontrollably. You could have become addicted to applause, ending up as another prodigy who burned out by 30. But now, you no longer need the applause. You need the work. You are driven by an internal imperative, a responsibility to the talent entrusted to you. Society often frames the midlife transition as a crisis. People watch an INEJ leave a stable engineering career to start a philosophy channel, or an INFJ in a stagnant marriage to pursue art, and they whisper, they're having a breakdown. Jung corrects this. He says, no, they are having a breakthrough. The walls of the persona are cracking, but they crack only to allow the self to emerge. Late success is almost always preceded by a period of chaos. If your life currently feels like it's unraveling, take heart. This is the alchemical fire. The structures collapsing are the ones that were too small for you. You are not dying, you are shedding. This brings us to the unique advantage of the afternoon of life. Jung divided life into the morning, youth expansion, ego building, and the afternoon maturity contraction, soul making. Society belongs to the morning, loud, bright, and frantic, but the treasure belongs to the afternoon. Success in the second half of life is sweeter precisely because it is not chased. Success becomes attractive rather than chased. In your 20s, You may have tried to force doors open, pushing against the current, and it likely felt exhausting. But as you integrate yourself, the dynamic changes. You stop pursuing what resists you, and instead become the kind of person who naturally draws what is meant for them. The desperation fades. You recognize that you have already survived your worst days. You faced isolation and stared into the void. What remains to fear? This absence of fear becomes magnetic, drawing opportunities, resources, and people toward you like a beacon. The final and most profound aspect of succeeding later in life is synthesis. For years, you may have felt like a collection of fragmented parts. Some knowledge of psychology, a stray skill in design, a deep understanding of history, and an unusual fascination with mechanics. To a purely logical mind, these pieces don't seem to fit together. You may have been criticized for being a jack of all trades, master of none. But Jung would correct this. He would say, "You are not scattered, you are constellating. You have been gathering the ingredients for a recipe no one else has ever cooked." Early achievers specialize. They excel at one narrow skill. But the late bloomer integrates. When your moment finally arrives, it doesn't look like a linear promotion. It appears as a sudden geometric alignment of everything you have ever learned. All the wasted time, abandoned hobbies, and painful detours suddenly lock into place, forming a singular, unique competence the world has never seen. You realize that you needed the depression to grasp depth. You needed the isolation to develop vision. You needed the technical skills to build a container. Your magnum opus, your great work. This is more than career. It is a full expression of your soul's code. Because it is crafted from such diverse and authentic materials, it cannot be replicated. You become a category one in a world of commodities. You become irreplaceable. This is when Jung's concept of synchronicity begins to shape your life. Synchronicity is the appearance of meaningful coincidences that seem causally unrelated, yet are deeply connected. When your internal truth aligns with your external actions, the universe stops resisting and starts conspiring with you. You meet the exact person you needed at a coffee shop. A book falls off a shelf with the answer you've sought for years. Opportunities appear seemingly out of nowhere, not because you force them, but because you are finally vibrating at the frequency of your destiny. You are no longer swimming upstream. You are the river. The struggles of the first half of life were the struggles of resistance. The success of the second half of life comes from the power of flow. But make no mistake, this path is not for faint of heart. You had to walk through the desert, while others rested in comfort. You endured the label of outcast and held fast to a vision that no one else could see. There is a specific reason you carried this burden. You are not living just for yourself. You are likely the cycle breaker of your lineage. Jung believed that we inherit the unresolved psychology of our ancestors. The late bloomer is often chosen to metabolize the trauma, fear, and limitations of their family line. Early success eluded you because you were busy clearing the psychic debris of generations. You were doing the heavy lifting for your bloodline. Now that the cleaning is done, the path is clear. You are free to run, and when you do, you run for all of them. Your success will vindicate your suffering. It will prove that the long, dark road was leading somewhere all along. You will stand as living evidence that it is never too late to become who you were meant to be, but you must remain vigilant. The old habits of the waiting room are persistent. The pull toward passivity, the tendency to analyze instead of act, will try to drag you back. You must protect your momentum with everything you have. This creates a new imperative. You cannot waste energy on anything that does not serve your great work. You cannot tolerate draining relationships, numbing habits, or distracting information. Your energy is now your most precious resource, and you must learn to seal the leaks in your vessel. If you have walked this long road and are finally ready to step out of the waiting room, leave a simple mark of your presence below. You don't need to write a paragraph, just write, "I am ready." Let this comment section serve as a roll call for late bloomers claiming their place at the table. It is a small action, but the psyche responds to action. So as you look ahead, do not dwell on regret. Do not envy the sprinters who peaked early. Do not envy those who found the easy path. They have had their reward. But you have something different. You have the depth of the ocean. You have the resilience of ancient redwoods. You have a mind honed by the whetstone of silence. Your time was never then. Your time is now. The curtain is rising and the audience is waiting.